Okay, so I thought it might be easier to have a video like showing the calculator. I know I do the other videos on the app thing, but I feel like it's kind of easier to see this. So I didn't have the actual part 4 yesterday. So sorry, but I'm just gonna write down like the number 1 on here. I'm gonna go over that one, and I'm just gonna write them in the box as I go. So the numbers for number 1, the set of values was 2.50. And remember, this is all mean absolute deviation. I put that up here, but I didn't actually write that on the steps. And this is number 1. 3.75, 1.25, 2.25, and then 3. The paper says 3.0, but whatever. Okay, so when we're doing mean absolute deviation, here's my set of numbers. Step 1 is to find the mean or the average. So I am going to get the calculator, and I'm going to type them all in. So first step with mean is adding them all up. So 2.5 plus 3.75 plus 1.25 plus 2.25 plus 3. And I always hit enter. I know like the next step is to divide. I always hit enter first to get the total. Sometimes that helps just to write that down. So I got 12.75, and I'm going to divide by how many numbers there are. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I'm going to divide by 5. And in the calculator, I can just hit divide by 5. Okay, so 2.55 is my mean. And I always circle it. Doesn't mean that's my answer. It's just easier for me to look back at later if something goes awry. Okay, so then step 2. The absolute value from the mean in step 1. So the mean in step 1 was 2.55. So this means we're going to be subtracting. And the absolute value is in our calculator. If we hit math, arrow over to num, and it's the first one, abs. And it gives us these 2 little bars. You can do this without a calculator. You just have to remember to drop the negative, but it is a little bit easier with the calculator. Okay, so in these bars is where we're going to be subtracting, and we're going to subtract each number in our original set from the mean. So every single problem is going to look like this. 2.55 minus, and then I'm just going to go down the list. So minus 2.5. And I'm going to do it in here also. 2.55 minus 2.5 equals 0.05. And then I'm going to do the next one. And I like to use the mean first. So there's a shortcut in the calculator, and I'll show that in just a second. Minus 3.75. Okay, so we're basically doing the same problem over and over and over, just different numbers here. So if you hit second, the blue button, and enter, it copies your problem down again. So when we do that, we can use the arrow key, arrow over, and change the number to be the next number in our list. So I'm going to change it to 3.75, hit enter, and that gives me 1.2. I'm going to do it again. Second, enter, and then I'm going to arrow over 1.25. I didn't write it down. It's okay. 2 minus 1.25, and I got 1.3. Okay, next is 2.25. I'm going to go ahead and write it down. So 2.55 minus 2.25. And these are nice because there's no negatives on this paper. Minus 2.25. Is that right? So I got 0.3. You can write it 0.3 or you can write 0.3, either way. And then the last one is 3. So second, enter, 2.55, and if there's extra stuff like this, I'm going to put 3 in. I'm going to hit this delete button, delete, delete, so it'll just delete one thing at a time. If I hit clear, everything's gone. So 3, and that is 0.45. So last one, I'm going to write it down. Okay. Okay, so now I have a new set of numbers. I subtracted every number up here from my mean. I got a new set of numbers. These are what I'm going to use in this last step. So find the mean or the average of the new set of numbers. So you don't have to do this if you get more comfortable with it. I'm just writing it down so you can see what each step needs to look like. So 0.05. 1.2, 1.3, 0.3, and 0.45. So when we're finding the mean, remember the first part of that is to take all these numbers and add them together. So I'm going to do that in the calculator. 0.05 plus 1.2 plus 1.3 plus 0.3 plus 0.45. And I hit enter always, and I got 3.3. And then the second part of that is to divide by, the books just fell. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So divided by 5. Divided by 5. And we get 0.66. This whole page should be multiple choice. So if for some reason you're a tiny bit off on your decimal, I would pick the one that's closest to it. And you can also use that second enter button as many times as you need. I always like to, if kids are just like a couple decimals off, like behind the decimals off, if you hit second enter after you've done the adding, you can do that as many times as you want. Get back to the problem you want to check out, and you can arrow over just to make sure that you have all of the numbers that you're supposed to have in your list. Okay, so, and then here's the worksheet. So there's 5 of those, and I would just, if you've got the blank one, so number 2, you can write your numbers up here and then go through and write your steps down. On the back of this page, okay, there's 5 of those. On the back, there's some scientific notation. I didn't realize there was going to be scientific notation, or I would have added that, but I did not know. I did not have the paper before it was printed out. So the following numbers in scientific notation, just to review, scientific notation looks like this. So there's a decimal number between 1 and 10. The times 10, that's just part of the scientific notation format. So you got a decimal number times 10, and then there's always an exponent up there, either positive or negative. And so how we get that is we want to make, we've got a decimal here. It's a tiny number. I see that it's a tiny number because it starts with a bunch of zeros. That's how you know it's small. So your brain really needs to start thinking like, if it looks like that, this number's automatically going to be negative. So if it's multiple choice, you can already eliminate any positive exponents because it starts with 0.00000. It's a tiny number. But the other way we can check that, the first step is we got to put a new decimal after the first non-zero. So the first number that's not 0. I'm looking. I see 6. That's where my new decimal needs to go. So the first part of my scientific notation, I've got 6.5. Okay, and my old decimal is here. So that means I'm going to count backwards till I get to that old decimal. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So times 10, because that's just part of the problem. I counted back 6 spaces. I included that digit. You don't just count the zeros, count everything that's behind it. And like we said, like since it's a tiny number like that, or since you counted to the left, that exponent is going to be a negative. Okay? And then opposite for your really big numbers. If it starts with a digit and it has a bunch of commas that go behind it, you're going to end up moving your new decimal to the right, and it's a big number, so your exponent will be positive. And then one more going from scientific to decimal. We're gonna do the same thing. If all you're looking at is the exponents, so if your exponent up here is a positive number, you're gonna move your decimal to the right. You just have to be careful on Schoology because there's so many zeros on some of these. You have to really look closely and count. That's the hardest part because it's multiple choice. And then I'll do this one because negatives trip people up sometimes. -5. Since it's a negative, that tells me I'm moving my decimal to the left. I always rewrite the number. Some kids just start, but I can't see it like that. So I rewrite 9.42, and I'm gonna move to the left because it's -5 places because that's the number up top. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. New decimal, and I'm gonna fill in with 1, 2, 3, 4 zeros.